Sil resented me for years, wore white to my wedding, and criticized everything I did. When I visited my sick mom, she called CPS to take my daughter, revealing she wanted custody of her. I've been with my husband Harry for almost 3 years now, and I absolutely adore his family. His mom is the sweetest and always so caring, while his dad has this knack for making everyone feel welcome. From the moment Harry and I began dating, his dad included me in everything, like I was already part of the family. There was this one rough patch where Harry and I broke up for a few months because of a misunderstanding, but when we patched things up, his dad's excitement was almost contagious. He was so thrilled that we worked things out. The only hiccup in this otherwise perfect family picture is Harry's older sister, Sarah. Ever since I started dating Harry, things between Sarah and me have always been awkward. I've heard stories from other women about dating guys with sisters and the weird power dynamics that sometimes come into play. But this was all new to me until I met Harry. Sarah's initial coldness didn't get to me much, especially since I felt so welcomed by the rest of his family. Eventually, Harry filled me in on why Sarah acts so possessive. Turns out their mom had health issues when they were growing up, so she was in and out of hospitals a lot. Their dad was busy taking care of their mom, which left Sarah feeling like she had to step in and take care of Harry. She helped him with his schoolwork, cooked for him, and pretty much considered herself his second mom. She even went to the extent of not letting him hang out with girls unless he asked for her permission, constantly checking up on him. As they grew older and their mom's health improved, Harry started becoming more independent and stopped asking Sarah for permission to do things. He preferred hanging out with friends, over spending time with her, which she really didn't like. It got pretty intense. Sarah went so far as to install a tracking app on his phone. One time, she even showed up at a party he was at with his friends and caused a scene. That's how Harry found out about the tracking app, and after a huge fight, he told their parents everything. Needless to say, Sarah got a good scolding for that. When Harry shared all this history with me, I seriously considered breaking up and running away from the drama. It was all a bit much. But I loved him too much to judge him for his sister's behavior. He was a victim in all this too, after all. So I decided to stick around, but became really cautious around Sarah from then on. Harry's family has this strong tradition of gathering for family dinners every couple of weeks and celebrating all the holidays together. We rotate hosting these dinners at different family members' homes. It's during these gatherings that Sarah and I usually interact because otherwise she never really bothers to call me, which I don't mind. When we do meet, I try to be as polite as possible, but she has this habit of making these subtle but hurtful comments. For example, after dinner one evening as I was tackling the mountain of dishes, Sarah walked over and said, "Yeah, after how much you ate, you might want to burn some extra calories doing the dishes." That comment stung. It felt like she was fat-shaming me when I wasn't even overweight. I snapped back, suggesting she help with the dishes since she seemed to have put on some holiday weight, too. Sarah exploded, calling me insensitive, and when Harry, his parents, and everyone else rushed over, she twisted my words, making me out to be the bad guy. I denied her accusations, and when no one took her side, she stormed off. She later texted me demanding an apology, but I refused. I didn't think I had done anything wrong. Since then, she's been even colder and ruder whenever we're alone. Fast forward to Sarah's wedding plans with her then-boyfriend Neil. She announced during a family event that she wanted everyone to keep their Christmas dates open for her wedding. I had already planned to visit my family, as we do every year since we live so far apart. Sarah, who rarely talks to me, suddenly asked if I was still planning to visit my family. I calmly replied that I was, but that I could coordinate if I knew her wedding date in advance. She blew up, accusing me of being selfish and only thinking about myself. Despite trying to explain that I just needed the date to make plans, she persisted, saying I was ungrateful for everything her family had done for me. Things got pretty heated until my mother-in-law stepped in to calm the situation, reminding Sarah that I hadn't outright declined her invitation. So it wasn't really fair to expect me to cancel long-standing plans with my family, especially since they see each other every month throughout the year. Sarah was super pissed, but eventually let it go. Later, Harry told me that what I did was completely wrong and that I should have just ditched my family plans for Sarah's wedding. I pointed out that I never asked him to join me at any family event, so he had no right to force me to attend his sister's wedding, especially when she clearly hated me. He argued that my actions made her hate me and that I needed to fix things with her or it would mess up our relationship. Feeling pressured and wanting to avoid more conflict, I texted Sarah to apologize for any misunderstanding and canceled my plans with my family. It was a tough decision, but I hoped it would smooth things over in Harry's family. To my surprise, her wedding never happened that Christmas because of financial issues. She ended up having a small court marriage and a backyard reception the following year. I was so angry that I canceled my plans for nothing, so I didn't go to her reception. Harry tried to get me tea. Oh, go. But I put my foot down. I was done with his sister's drama. I also stopped going to their monthly family dinners and only showed up for special holidays. Harry would go alone, but would then complain about being bored without me. Eventually, he stopped going to multiple family events, too. I don't think it was entirely because of me. After we moved in together, his priorities shifted like anyone's would. Sarah would call him, asking why he wasn't at this or that dinner, and he'd say he was tired or had too much work. Meanwhile, I started hearing from Harry's cousins that Sarah was blaming me for all this, claiming I was keeping Harry from his family, which wasn't true. I asked Harry to set the record straight with his sister because I didn't want to be the scapegoat. He agreed, and at the next family event, he confronted Sarah about it. I didn't hear the whole conversation, but it turned into a heated argument. Sarah accused me of being abusive towards Harry, saying I showed narcissistic behavior and was isolating him from his family. She painted me as manipulative and controlling. When Harry defended me, she just dismissed it, calling him blinded by love and saying I was using him for his money and looks. Harry came home really shaken and told me he was done with his sister. For months, he blocked her and didn't let their mom and dad guilt him into speaking with her. Things changed when we found out Sarah was pregnant. His parents had an intervention and begged Harry to make peace with her before the baby was born. Reluctantly, he agreed and had a few lunches with her to talk things out. They seemed okay after that, but she never apologized to me for the things she said. When I pointed it out, Harry told me to let it go because she was going to be a mom soon and might mature. But that didn't happen. After Sarah gave birth, her neediness skyrocketed. She frequently, led Harry to babysit her baby, claiming she and her husband needed to work to support the kid. Harry, unsure about looking after an infant alone, would always check with me first. Sometimes we babysat together, but Sarah's demands kept increasing. It got to the point where she expected Harry to play dad to her baby. It wasn't just him. I was also looking after the kid, and it was exhausting. So, I began declining, and whenever I did, Harry would also refuse, which frustrated Sarah. I never told Harry he couldn't babysit his nephew. I actually encouraged him to step up without relying on me. But Harry always said he lacked experience with infants and wasn't comfortable doing it alone. I'm sure Sarah blamed me for this too because she started manipulating him, saying things like, "My kid really wants this," or trying to trap us into agreeing to babysit by asking if we had any plans without giving context. When Harry and I were planning our wedding, Sarah never once called to congratulate us. But at a family dinner where I was also present, she demanded that Harry and I pay for a nanny to look after her son during the event so she could drink and enjoy herself without worrying about the kid. So Sarah was really worried about her kid, but Harry straight up told her that it wasn't our job to cover her child care costs. He said if she didn't want to bring her son, she could arrange something with her husband's family. Sarah wasn't having it, though. She said she didn't trust them enough to leave her son with them. Well, her husband Neil overheard this, and they got into a big argument. Neil thought she was being ridiculous and said his parents would totally take care of their son for one night. Anyway, during a chat with my soon-to-be mother-in-law about my wedding dress, I was super excited and showed her some pictures. The dress was gorgeous and literally my dream dress. But then Sarah butted in, saying it was a waste of money. She bragged about how she had been smart and got married in court to save money. My mother-in-law kindly reminded her that she didn't have much choice due to her financial situation back then. Sarah got defensive, claiming she could have picked somewhere else but chose not to because she didn't want to blow her husband's money. She then threw some shade my way, implying that not every woman could make sacrifices like she did. I calmly told her that Harry and I were both pitching in for the wedding, so I was actually being a better wife by not relying solely on Harry. Sarah wasn't happy about that and sulked for the rest of the evening. When my friends and I went to Vegas for my bachelorette party, we had a blast and posted tons of pics. Later, Sarah told my husband that I probably hooked up with someone because, in her words, no self-respecting woman would party so hard before her wedding. This was ironic, given her own brother, Harry, had also partied hard at his bachelor party. At our rehearsal dinner, Sarah made a point of bringing up my wild Vegas trip. She suggested I could had a low-key party instead of going all out in Vegas. I just laughed it off and explained that I enjoyed Vegas, and since it was my own money funding the trip, I was totally fine with having some pre-wedding fun. On the morning of our wedding, as I was getting ready, my mother-in-law came up to me looking worried. She showed me a picture Sarah had just sent her of the dress she was planning to wear. It was off-white and could almost pass as a wedding dress. I was fuming. My mother-in-law said she had no idea Sarah chose that dress and had even asked her not to wear it. But Sarah claimed she was already on her way and couldn't change. I called Harry and asked him to handle it because I didn't want to deal with this on our wedding day. Harry and his dad quickly sorted it out. His dad rushed out and got Sarah a new dress, insisting she change before joining the wedding. I was relieved but never forgave her for that stunt. During the reception, Sarah accused me of being a controlling bride and said I was just jealous for making her change her dress. I told her I was done with her gaslighting and manipulation and wouldn't put up with her childish behavior anymore. Harry backed me up and scolded his sister for her insensitivity. Sarah started crying and eventually left the reception. Later, Neil came up to me and apologized, saying he had also told Sarah not to wear the dress, but she stubbornly wore it anyway. This made me even more sure she was trying to ruin my day. Things were tense between Sarah and me until my daughter Mary was born. The new family member seemed to soften Sarah, and she apologized when she visited us in the hospital. She showed genuine interest in Mary, and Harry's family was happy she made the first move towards making peace. Over time, I encouraged Mary to bond with Sarah's son because they're cousins and should be close. Sarah and I even started hanging out while the kids played. We talked about life and our husbands. I found out Sarah had been trying for another baby and really wanted a daughter. I told her not to stress too much since you can't control the baby's gender. At family events, Sarah would always hug and kiss Mary, who isn't very touchy-feely and would often cry from the awkwardness. I didn't think much of it until recently. My mom fell ill and had to be hospitalized, so Harry, my in-laws, and I planned to visit her. They would stay for 4 days, but I'd stay 2 weeks to support my dad and help my mom recover. Harry would take care of Mary while I was away. I wanted to take Mary with us, but since we'd be at the hospital most of the time, I didn't want to expose her to germs. Plus, I knew she wouldn't handle it well. So Harry noticed that I get bored easily and offered to ask his sister, Sarah, to watch our daughter for the 4 days we'd be away. Surprisingly, Sarah enthusiastically agreed. Before we left, I gave her a list of my daughter's allergies, and she assured me everything would be fine. As we landed and waited to collect our luggage, I got a call from an unknown number. Thinking it might be the hospital, I answered. To my shock, it was Child Protective Services, CPS, on the line. My heart dropped as CPS demanded to know where we were and why we had left our daughter in someone else's care. I explained that we were visiting my sick mother, and Harry's sister had agreed to look after our daughter. But to my utter disbelief, CPS informed me that Sarah had filed a complaint against us, accusing us of abandoning our child, and she was planning to take us to court for custody. In a state of panic, I frantically tried to explain the situation and handed the phone to Harry to help clarify things. Despite our best efforts, it became clear that one of us had to return immediately to deal with these allegations in person. Harry quickly booked a return flight, which cost a fortune since tickets were so expensive last minute. His parents and I stayed behind to visit my mom. We really didn't have much choice given the circumstances. The whole situation left us reeling. I was so distressed and couldn't rest until Harry called to assure me that he had reached home and our daughter was perfectly safe. I broke down in tears, feeling overwhelmed by everything: my mother's hospitalization and Sarah's betrayal. Harry's parents and I kept pressing him for an explanation about why Sarah would do such a thing. He reassured us that he'd address everything once we were back home. Still, I found it hard to stay with my mom for a week under such stress, so I decided to fly back with Phil and Mill in 4 days. I'm currently overwhelmed with anger and frustration towards Sarah. I can't understand what led her to call CPS on us, and it's driving me crazy. Despite Harry's reassurances, I can't shake the feeling that he's not taking this seriously enough, which only adds to my confusion and frustration. Am I wrong for thinking what Sarah did is unforgivable? Update 1. It's been 4 days since my last update. I'm heading back home today and want to share that my mom is slowly recovering, though still hospitalized. Once I confirm that our daughter Mary is doing well, I might consider returning, depending on how things unfold. Also, I want to clear up any doubts about my husband's ability to care for our child. Although he used to babysit his nephew because of his sister's demands when he was younger, he has since matured into a fantastic father. He looks after our daughter with great love and care. Please don't blame him for Sarah's actions. For the past 4 days, Phil and Mill have tried to contact Sarah and her husband, but they've been unresponsive. I don't know if this means anything fishy is going on, but I wanted to update everyone. Update 2. A week has passed since my last update, and many of you have been reaching out for news. First, let me assure you that my husband and our daughter are perfectly safe. They're both fine, and our daughter is her usual playful self. When we all sat down to talk, Harry explained what had happened. It turns out Sarah was in a psychiatric hospital, which is why we couldn't reach her. We were all shocked to learn that she had become obsessed with the idea of having a daughter. When we left Mary in her care, she saw it as an opportunity to fulfill her desire and planned to take us to court for custody. Sarah shared her plans with her husband, Neil, who didn't believe her at first. He thought it was a joke because no one in their right mind would think like this. But Sarah did file the complaint, and Harry had to fly back to clarify things with CPS. After verifying the situation, CPS firmly warned Sarah against filing false reports in the future. Harry confronted her, unable to believe his own sister could do this. Sarah justified her actions by saying she had observed me and believed I wasn't a good mother because I didn't kiss or hug my daughter. Enough. She claimed that whenever she held Mary, the child would cry or get uncomfortable, making her think I was abusing my daughter in private. Harry was furious and told Sarah her behavior wasn't normal and that she was becoming too obsessed with our daughter. Sarah kept insisting she deserved to have our daughter, which was ridiculous. Harry pointed out how wrong she was to call CPS on her own family without any proof. After hours of talking, Sarah finally broke down and admitted she wasn't in the right state of mind and needed help. She confessed to fantasizing about taking our child away because she couldn't handle not having a daughter of her own. I've always dreamed of having a daughter, but even my husband Neil was shocked when he found out the depth of my struggles. Eventually, Harry and Neil had a really heartfelt chat, and Neil ended up packing a bag for Sarah to take her to a psychiatric hospital for treatment. That's why she's been out of touch for the past few days. Neil apologized to my father-in-law and mother-in-law for not answering their calls, explaining that he wanted to talk to them in person and clarify everything. Since then, Van has been staying with us. I know Neil works long hours, and I don't want Van to be alone at home, so we've welcomed him into our place to make sure he has company and support during this tough time. Now that everything's out in the open, I can see why my sister-in-law called CPS and why my husband waited until now to explain everything to me. It's a lot to take in, and honestly, I'm kind of at a loss for words. Update 3. Wow! My post has gone viral. I've taken all of your advice to heart and had a talk with my husband. He's agreed to get a restraining order against my sister, even though she's getting mental health treatment. Honestly, I'm really scared to leave my child behind when I go visit my parents next week. B. My husband and in-laws have promised me that they'll make sure nothing happens to our child. I also feel super guilty for not spending enough time with my parents, especially since my mom is sick. I'm hoping this visit will let me spend quality time with my dad and be there for my mom as she continues her recovery journey.